Also, we can cry.
everything.
This thing about crying being, it's such a girly thing. No, it's not. It's just an expression of how stressed I am at this moment in time.
Absolutely.
Dad stuck a lawnmower engine on it. I went up and down the farm lane and I just went, Dad, I've got to do this.
Women can be Formula One drivers, women can be professional drivers. I mean, for goodness sake, if a disabled driver can compete against an able-bodied driver, of course a woman can compete against a man.
Welcome to Women in the Driving Seat. This is the episode all about motorsport, and I'm joined by two women who literally are in the driving seat in every aspect of their lives. We've got Nathalie McGloin here and Vicki Butler-Henderson. We will come to you both in a minute. First of all, let's have a look at your bios. Nathalie is the first and only female tetraplegic racing driver in the world. She also co-founded and runs a charity for disabled drivers called Spinal Track, as well as being the FIA Disability and Accessibility Commission president. Before racing, Nathalie was a full-time wheelchair rugby athlete competing for 10 years. Nathalie is 41, has a husband and a dog, and lives just outside Silverstone in the Northamptonshire countryside. Despite being a confident public speaker and holding many important roles within motorsport, Nathalie will openly admit that she still suffers with imposter syndrome. Great, that's just what we want to come on to. Vicki has been racing from the age of 12. She is a presenter for Discovery's Fifth Gear show, which airs yearly, and regularly reviews cars for 2 YouTube channels, including her own called The Car Girl, Vicki Butler-Henderson. Before that, she was the first woman presenter of BBC's Top Gear to drive a car sideways. Yes! Held the position of road tester at Auto Express and news editor at What Car magazines, as well as contributing to the Sunday Times, Saturday Telegraph, and many other publications since the age of 17. She is a mummy to 2, owns a pair of Ridgeback dogs, oof, proper dogs, and one Ducati Monster motorbike on which she is, quotes, very fast until corner crops up. Excellent. More about that shortly. Okay, well, I think we just dive straight into the first section of the podcast, which is plates spinning and balls dropped. This is what's been going on in your week. What successes have you had? What almighty failures have you had? And Nathalie, feel free.
My week's been really boring.
Make something up then.
I've been recovering from some shoulder problems. So my kind of rehab has been prioritised this week. So my big successes have been that I managed to lift some weights this week.
What are we talking? 50 kg,
2 kilograms.
Good girl. Great start.
Start slowly. But then I had a big failure yesterday. I went for a sports massage and I thought my shoulder was going to go into inflammation again. So I couldn't really move it properly last night, but it's fine this morning.
I mean, for you, that's quite serious if that happens, right?
Yeah, because it's kind of all I've got. So, when shoulders go, it's a bit incapacitating for me. So I'm hoping that it's plain sailing rehab from here on in.
Okay, so you've been taking care of yourself this week.
I have been self-care and back in my gym, which I love. So that's been good for my mental health and for my sleeping, which has been affected by not training. So, boring week, but
necessary.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, fair enough. Vicki?
I have been struggling to get to grips with my air fryer that I had at
you
Christmas
too.
time.
Am I the only one not to have one?
And managed to make a fish pie, which my 10-year-old son, he said it was actually surprisingly okay. So that, I feel, was quite a treat. Then I managed to scald my hand with my hot tap as I was washing my hands under the tap. I managed to put the boiling hot tap on it, so that has been a bit of a
can actually see
point.
that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's proper.
And then I've also been on all fours cleaning out my daughter's bunny rabbits because
Glad you finished that sentence. Yeah,
because she goes to school when it's dark and comes back when it's dark, so she doesn't have time for the midweek clean out. So I'd be doing that, and then putting my work hat on, I've been writing a couple of scripts for 2 cars which I'm filming in the next few days.
Oh, really? Which cars?
We have got the MG Cyberster, which is the
I had that last week.
two-seater convertible, £50,000. And then the Land Cruiser, Toyota Land Cruiser.
Ooh.
So I've got that coming up as well. So, and it takes me about a day to do a script, but I don't ever sit down and do, 9 to 5 because I just haven't got that time. I'm always running around, juggling, doing other things. So it's sort of scrapping a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there. And to write 2 scripts in 1 week is a really, it's quite
an achievement.
Tough ask.
Yeah. Well done both.
Thank you.
Nathalie, explain to me and everyone listening the role of the FIA Disability Commission? What's that all about?
So the Disability and Accessibility Commission was created in 2018, and it kind of came about almost because of Billy Munger, but it was always there in the background. So the Medical Commission used to be in charge of all things disabled, but when Billy had his accident and lost his legs, he went to the FIA to see if he could get his race licence back, because the legislation for disabled motorsport prior to that time was pretty much exclusively written for Alex Zanardi, who lost his legs in what was IndyCar, used to be called something else.
And that was in the 90s.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. So you couldn't have a race licence or race single-seaters with the previous legislation. So Billy went to change that, or to ask for an exemption. And I think John Todd had been looking at what needed to be done. There was some ideas. They'd had a few meetings with different disabled people. And then I went to Geneva for their international sports conference to what I thought was do a talk on disabled motorsport and safety. It turned out it was an audition. And John offered me the position of Disability and Accessibility Commission President at the end of that summer, and that was 2017. And then it was created the following year.
What was your experience in motorsport before that?
Not very much. So I'd started racing in 2015, and had created Spinal Track in 2016.
Great name, by the way.
Yeah, really good.
Which my husband claims was his idea, which it definitely wasn't. Because he was like, "You've never seen the film." I was like,
I love the way we don't know whether it might have been or not, but you and I just went, no, it's not gonna be
Men
Nathalie,
try and
yeah.
claim so much.
It was my idea. I know exactly when I came to him with it, where I was, where we were living. Anyway, so the Disability and Accessibility Commission is responsible for the global legislation around disabled motorsport. And it's not just about drivers, it's about volunteers and officials, co-drivers, anything that any reason you've got to be involved in motorsport with a disability, we are here to represent you. So I have a team of experts, which are people with lived experience with disability and motorsport on my commission. We have, I think there are 11 people now. It's a new commission last year. And it ranges from disabled marshals to disabled rally drivers, disabled Dakar drivers, someone who is in charge of the ASN, which is like Motorsport UK is our ASN. In different countries have governing bodies, which are called ASN. ZIC stands for something in French, but I always forget what it means. But he's responsible for the Turkish ASN, Disability in Motorsport. So my commission has and knows the experience needed to progress with disability in motorsport, which I think is so important with stuff like this, because unless you've lived it, you don't know what it's like, and you don't know the right way to move forward.
No.
So yeah, that's basically what my commission does in a nutshell.
So do you all kind of meet up remotely?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And what's on the agenda for 2025?
So we've got some really exciting stuff on the agenda. So the Women in Motorsport Commission started, I think last year, a mentorship scheme where women could sign up either as a mentor or a mentee, or both, and mentor people into roles within motorsport, or mentor women, and mentee as well. So, and you could surprisingly be both. So, for example, if you're a marshal and you want to progress into racing, well, not progress, but step into racing, you could mentor someone into being a volunteer and official, but whilst at the same time being menteed or mentored into racing. So it's had huge success. And so this year we've got budget to start a disabled one, which is going to be incredible, because we have like an Instagram account where people get in touch and ask for advice about hand controls or left foot accelerators.
What's your Insta account? Do you know your handle?
It's FIA_disability_accessibility.
Okay.
But it's been like happening on a kind of informal kind of level since the Instagram account went live, I think 4 years ago. So now to have a proper scheme in place where we can actually tell disabled people, if you've got an interest in a certain area of motorsport, we'll give you someone who is disabled and has done that or has been involved in that role for however many years, who can give you the route in.
Would it actually give practical help as well, as in come and, sit alongside me when I'm in the garage, preparing for my race, or when I'm scrutineering? Is there actually sort of a physical, practical side to it?
So the beauty of the mentorship scheme is the two individuals can decide exactly what that looks like. So it might be that, you live in America and someone lives in Georgia and someone lives in New York, and maybe that wouldn't be possible. But it could be that you live in the UK and you both live in London or whatever, and you can meet up and do exactly that. So I think two of the women who were on the women mentorship scheme, who were both, or one of them was a marshal and one of them was a budding marshal, met up at one of the F1 races. So you'll tailor it around your situation and your availability. So that could absolutely happen.
I mean, the fact it's got accessibility as a term in there as well, that's such a buzzword these days, but it's so important on so many different levels. Mm-hmm. And Vicki, just thinking about, making motorsport accessible for women, making it accessible for girls, and you have been racing since you were 12 in one form or another, and that's your dad raced, didn't he? And you grew up kind of on a farm, I think, and it gave you access to, probably easier access than somebody growing up in the middle of a city, to karts or whatever. But how much of a step up and an opening of doors did that give you, or have you still kind of had to fight for wide open accessibility to racing and motorsport?
I'm so grateful that my father, he was in the British karting team when he was 16 and a farmer. So when I was sort of 10 years old, I found this old kart chassis of his in the back of a barn. Dad stuck a lawnmower engine on it. I went up and down the farm lane and I just went, Dad, I've got to do this. So then you could start racing at the age of 12. So I did loads of practices at my local kart track, which was Rye House in Hoddesdon, which was then Lewis Hamilton's local one, sort of a decade or two after me. And then I got through that way. But it was because somebody that I knew, my dad, had a passion for that car, and he opened that door to me. If he'd have been involved in golf or something like that, I would never have looked at motorsport because it wasn't around. So I just say to anybody, if they have got, a daughter, a niece, a cousin, whatever, who shows the vaguest sign of being interested in anything to do with cars, just lead them by the hand and show them what you can, what's out there.
But did it, have there been periods in your life where it's been too hard to kind of carry it on because, I know, it's just you're a grumpy teenager, or you're more interested in boys for a bit, or you're away at university, and then is it when you step outside it, is it kind of harder to kind of get back into it?
Well, I also loved four legs as well, so I was into horses as well. So I sort of there was some weekends where I was like, Dad, no, I don't want to race this weekend. I want to go and, do something on the pony. But it was the love of four wheels that just kept calling me back. I think partly because a horse has got a mind of its own and a cart really hasn't. So you can you can be more in control, with it. But when I was 17, I was doing my A-levels. I wanted to go from racing karts into single-seaters. So, stepping up to racing at Brands Hatch, Silverstone, stuff like that. And I wanted to be a Formula One driver. But very early on, I sort of, age 17, I realised that this wasn't going to work. I couldn't get the sponsorship together. My stars didn't align. Things just weren't coming together. And I remember waking up one morning just thinking, in tears, just going, well, that's it. I'm never going to make it into Formula One. So that dream of mine is no longer. And I can show you, I'm sure, 100 kids for every one Formula One driver who has experienced that, because there are 20 Formula One drivers in the world.
Yeah.
And to get up there is unbelievably tough. You really do need luck, money, talent, all singing at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn, that my dream of a career was over at 17. I had barely taken my A-levels. So
but I mean, actually looking at both of you, you both combine motorsport with, your president, Nathalie, the FIA Accessibility Commission. You've got other stuff going on alongside it. Vicki, you've had TV and other stuff going alongside it. If you are not going to be a Formula One racing driver, and if you don't feel like you've got other skills or talents, or you just want to race, is there still a good career to be had out of it?
I think so. I think building a career in racing is extremely difficult because, like you say, there are so few spaces for Formula One drivers, Formula 2 drivers, but even for professional drivers, at the highest level, like to be a professional driver, it's, what would you say, 5% of people that race?
And being a professional driver means you get paid to do that.
Yeah. And are we talking about, where's that revenue coming from? Sponsorship?
Yeah, from sponsorship, and also a lot of racing drivers go into the GT category, which requires you to have sort of 2 drivers. So you'll frequently have somebody who is very wealthy and they'll want a professional driver alongside them to take stints in a 2-3 hour race, and they then pay the professional racing driver for that. So you get money that way as well as sponsorship.
And on the thorny topic of women in motorsport as racing drivers, where are we in terms of physicality? And, there's this whole thing about, do women have the physicality to be a Formula One driver? Can they withstand the G-force on their necks, that sort of thing? Is this all old wives' tales, or is there something in this?
I think, Vicki, you'll be more experienced with that than me because I haven't raced a single-seater, but I think there is something in that with the... the Formula One cars and even Formula 2 cars are designed for men. The seats aren't designed to have hips. The steering wheel is a certain size. But I think women can be Formula One drivers. Women can be professional drivers. For goodness sake, if a disabled driver can compete against an able-bodied driver, of course a woman can compete against a man. It's skill and bravery and finance.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah. About disabled competing alongside able-bodied, so why would there be
Robert Kubica, who used to race for Williams, had an accident in a WRC car that he almost has no use of his right arm. So he can put it on the steering wheel, but it's very limited in what he could do with it. And he raced and he wasn't competitive in Formula One, but because he was with a weak team, but he was good enough. So... if you can get a man that has some kind of disability racing against the top, then of course you can get a woman.
Yeah. What do you think?
think in the sort of 80s and 90s, then yes, I think the Formula One cars were much more physical, and therefore
because they were heavier.
Yeah, exactly. And if you were a woman in the 80s and 90s, you had to do a little bit more fitness than a bloke would, because we inherently don't quite have the muscles of men. But today, Lewis Hamilton is more lithe than I am, and he wrestles with a Formula One car. I see absolutely no reason whatsoever that physicality would would deter anyone, any woman being in the sport. I understand that we are a slightly different shape, and when I got fitted for my single-seater seat, when I got into single-seaters having raced karts, we moulded the seat around me, so you sit in some warm foam and it kind of like foams up around you, and I got out of the seat. I got out of the seat and the mechanics were like, bloody hell, I haven't seen those kind of, shapes before. But, we slotted that into my single-seater and everything was fine. So there's absolutely no way that physicality will be a hindrance at all.
I'm glad we've put that one to bed. Good.
Yeah.
Now, we are already halfway through, which
No.
means it's time for podcast pit stop. Yeah, I did that. Quick,
Have you got a jingle for it yet?
There will be a jingle when
Okay,
people
cool.
listen
Okay.
to this post-recording, Vicky. Just not right now. There you go. There you go. Thanks very much. Really helpful. 6 questions each. We're going to go... Vicky, you're going to go first.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, I'm clapping too much on the microphone. Here we go. Are you ready?
No.
Yes or no? I mean, not yes or no to are you
Okay.
ready? Yes or no answers. Ready? Here we go. Circuit or circuits? See what I did there?
Oh,
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
Circuit.
Okay. Raised hand emoji on a work call or just butt in?
Oh, etiquette.
It's quick
Butt
fire
in.
round, Right, butt in. Walk or run?
Run.
DIY or call someone in?
Oh, call someone.
Bernie Ecclestone or Alan Sugar?
Oh.
Crikey. Now, I've met them both, and this is...
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh,
wow.
name drop.
This is very
Oh,
tricky.
just answer the bloody question.
I don't think I can.
Right, we're moving on. Glasses or contacts?
Oh, contacts.
Okay, thank God. Nathalie, please be easier than that. Nathalie, company logo on your email or no?
A company logo on email.
Green-fingered or fingers and thumbs?
Green-fingered.
Mobile number on your email sign-off or no?
Yes, mobile number on email sign.
Really, I find that so intrusive. Read or audiobook?
Read.
Miles per gallon or miles per kilowatt hour?
Miles per gallon.
I was like, don't be ridiculous. You've got 2 racing drivers in the room. Formula 1 or Formula E?
Formula 1.
Okay.
Nice.
That's it. Thanks,
Nice.
guys.
Pleasure.
Back to proper questions. Nathalie, coming back to you, what point did you get interested in racing cars? Was this something you were in a car crash 25 years ago, and as a result of that became tetraplegic? Was it something that you turned to after that, or was there a passion before?
So there wasn't a passion before. When I learned how to drive, a car became a source of independence for me. And it also became somewhere where I could hide my disability. So very different now. But when I was, 16 years old, I went to university, and suddenly, I was very different at school as well. But, being in a wheelchair is something that you definitely have to kind of nurture that identity to be confident with it. So when I learned how to drive and I realised that I could whiz around in a car and no one could see my chair and my disability, that was something that was really appealing to me. And then I think after that developed a kind of passion for faster cars, and I actually then got into track days. So I was actually at a wheelchair rugby tournament in Toulouse and met a fellow kind of petrol head who said that his road car was faster than mine. And I was having none of that. And he said, well, why don't you come on a track day and we'll see who's right. And that then developed the kind of love of track days, which I did for about 6 years. And I was like, do you know what? Maybe I might see if I can get my racing license. But it was just like, I'm just going to get my racing license and it'll be, maybe I'm the first person with my injury to do it. And then that'll be it. And then before I knew it, I bought a Porsche Cayman S and I was turning it into a racing car and I was going to enter into my first race. So it kind of snowballed, but it started definitely from a passion for cars because of what that meant to me as a disabled person, and then the speed, and then it kind of developed from there.
What controls do you have on your car then? Or how's it set up differently?
So I have hand controls on my car. So I have a lever set up to the right-hand side of the steering wheel, attached to the pedals. So I push forward to brake and pull back to accelerate in my road car. In my racing car, it's push forward to brake and push down to accelerate.
Right, okay.
They're basically a rod system attached to the pedals, so you can still drive with your feet. So Andrew, my husband, drives with the pedals with his feet, and then I get in and drive with the system that literally depresses the pedals through my hand.
So how do you work out, like when I race a car, I feel everything through, my derriere through to my hands, and I can, balance the car around me. How does that work with you? Because your centre of gravity, the way you feel, is going to be higher.
Very, very different. So I don't feel, I'm paralysed from my chest down, so I've got no sensation below my level of injury. So I don't feel things through my bum, but I do feel the car through my rib cage and the seat insert that you talked about. So I have a moulded seat insert that goes around my rib cage, and I guess everything's just moved up. So I still feel in the way that you would, but just from a different body part. And I think I struggled with that at first, or maybe I didn't struggle that first, but people thought that I was struggling with that because I would always catch a slide slightly later, so that the slide had already developed rather than being just a little correction. But I think it was just lack of experience, because I'm fine with that now. And I actually started learning how to drive on gravel.
Brilliant.
Maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Lovely.
So we had a rally school that we used to run some of our charity programs at, and I thought, well, I'm having some of this as well. And I love that. I love it.
How did you get on with
my
your relationship?
God.
I'm so
Carry
sorry.
on.
I know.
I mean, I'll just take a back seat.
But if you had a car accident before you could even drive on the road yourself, how then do you cross that barrier of that car.
Okay, so I don't associate it as the same thing. Sorry, Erin.
No, it's fine. This podcast is brought to you by Vicki Butler-Henderson. Carry on. I'm going to lie down.
So I was actually at a test day at Croft, and I'd had a test day at Brands Hatch with Mike Wilds, ex-F1 driver, who was telling crash stories about he got set on fire in an F1 car and got out. And my mechanic, Mike wasn't with us at the time, but my mechanic in the garage said, don't swap crash stories with Mike Wilds. And I said, I've never really been in a car crash. And both my husband and my mechanic were like, really? And I was like, oh, well, the one, because I'd crashed the car a little bit that day, but I just got the tail out at Tower and bumped the hay bales. And I said, well, that wasn't really a crash, was it? And they were like, what about the other one? And I was like, oh, the one where I took off at Brooklands and landed and smashed all the inside of the car. No, I wouldn't really count that as a car crash either. And they were like, the one that you broke your neck in? I was like, oh, yeah. Well, that doesn't really count. So it wasn't like I've tried to separate the two for my own kind of sanity and bravery. I just didn't really register. And that was a really natural exposure of that. Because I was like, well, yeah, I haven't been in a car crash. So,
Wow.
of course you have.
You two are kind of made of different stuff mentally, I think. Vicki, do you love being a woman in a man's world? Because it is still a man's world in motorsport, right? I know you have done a lot of TV and a lot of media. Mind you, actually, what am I talking about? In automotive media, it's very much
exactly,
a man's world.
You're in it as well, honey.
So here we both are. Hello. But do you kind of relish it? Do you ever miss having more female company? How do you feel about it all?
When I'm filming, it is... I mean, I think I filmed with one female director in 20 years.
Yeah.
I would love to be in a place where there are more women behind the camera, directing, doing sound. I would love that. But it's not the case as it is. I have been really blessed, I think, to be a woman in this world. And
Why?
Because it... Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Why? Well, that is a good question.
Well, would you want to be a man?
I think
I love
because,
being a woman.
Yeah, because I love it because I'm a bit different. I love the fact that I can slide a car around and people go, oh.
Yeah.
They kind of give me
Subverting
respect.
expectations.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
quite cool, isn't it?
And also, about 6 years ago, I was racing at Snetterton, took my children there, and they were in the stands watching, and they said to me afterwards, they were like, Mum, you are amazing. And only then I was like, actually, I'm a role model for my kids. And that made me think, I ought to...
Well, there you go. There's your answer.
So there we go.
Boom. You've got that next time someone asks you that question. Nathalie, you when we had this prep call, you had a story that I think is really important for people to hear out there, which is around how being a successful racing driver or whatever is not just all about got budget, race. I think it's really important that people hear about the times when it goes wrong mentally and emotionally, when the fear comes in, the doubt, whatever. And tell us a bit.
So I had a race at Daytona in Florida in October, November 2023. And my sponsors got behind me with it. They said, we'll give you the budget for it. You can go racing. I decided that I'd share the car with my husband. And immediately I was like, I don't want to race at Daytona. But I thought, no, you've got ages, you can get used to it. And there was all kind of peacocking of, we're going to be doing 160 miles an hour on the banking. And I was like, I don't want to be doing 160 miles on the banking. So for me, I really, really need to test at circuits. I'm not one of these people that just can get in and go around a circuit having never been there before and just be on the pace. I just need it. And we went there and I got in the car. I tried to blank out all of the men in the garages talking about all the risks that could happen and talking about everything that could go wrong. And I got in and I got on the banking and I was like, I can't do this. And I came in and my mechanic was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I can't do it. He was like, yes, you can, go back out. I went back out, got on the banking again, can't do it. Came in, tried for the whole of that session, took up all of Andrew's drive time as well. And I was like, I don't know how I can get over this. So then I tried to
What were you feeling? Fear or
panic attack, pure panic attack. The sensation of being up on that banking, so it triggered something in me. I had COVID. I didn't know. I don't know whether it was an inner ear kind of imbalance, but I think it was more than that. I freaked out. I've never been like that on a race circuit before.
So sweaty, breathing hard, just the whole...
Yeah, like a proper panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to get myself back in. And there was a point where I couldn't even get in the car. And then I got in the car, went to drive out onto the circuit and just veered left and went, I'm not doing it. And I got out of the car. Oh, God, I'm going to get emotional. And I sat in the garage with my helmet on. I cried my eyes out and I was like, I don't actually know how I'm going to cope with this failure. And I can remember I got into the rental car and I put my head into the footwell and I just sobbed like a baby. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get over this. So then I was like, we're going to pretend that the car's broken and Andrew's not going to drive because I'm not going to have the humiliation of going back and saying that I couldn't do it. And then I was like, oh, my mechanics are there. And so I let Andrew drive and it was the best thing in the world. Like he doesn't really get excited by racing. He's been racing since he was a kid. And he got out the car. And we have a thing where I say when I presented Kimi Raikkonen with the trophy at the British Grand Prix, it was the best day of my life, including my wedding. And he's like, you're not allowed to say that. And when he got out of the car at Daytona, he said, this is the best day of my life, including our wedding. So I was like, excellent, we've both got one. So how did I deal with it? Some people can't do the banking. There was a podcast with Ollie Webb recently where he said that he couldn't get on with the banking. He was thinking too much about it. It wasn't natural for him. And he didn't end up doing it. Ollie Webb's a professional racing driver. And I listened literally a few days ago. Andrew told me about this podcast. And I was like, maybe I'm just one of those people. And I'm not anywhere near Ollie Webb. Like literally I was doing 100 miles an hour. I should have been doing 160 and I couldn't cope with it. He will have been doing the proper speed, but just not doing the that top 2%.
But now you've talked about it on this podcast, and the more people have to talk about these moments. It's the same in motorsport as it is in careers. These moments of doubt, these moments where you think you've been a massive failure. I was interested that you said, "Oh my God, it was a massive failure." Was it, or did it need reframing or something? But anyway, you've spoken about that. So somebody else is, and so it spreads and so it goes.
I've been filming before in a big off-roader, filming for Fifth Gear, all the boys in the car with me, and I've gone up off-roading and it's not been able to get to the top and we've had to go backwards, and that is my worst nightmare. And I have cried as the boys have laughed because, we don't have to be brilliant at everything, but we are girls and we're brilliant at pretty much
also, we can cry.
Everything.
This thing about crying being, it's such a girly thing. No, it's not. It's just an expression of how stressed I am at this moment in time.
Absolutely.
Vicky, God, we're so racing through this podcast. We're almost out of time. But we didn't really get to touch on you taking time out from career to bring up your children, be a mum, not fully taking time out, still doing some stuff, but how you feel about that. You're still in the thick of it? Is it great? Has it felt like a sacrifice? Have you missed out on work?
I think obviously if I hadn't had children, I would have done a lot more TV work, because when the phone rings and says, can you come up to, Scotland and do X, Y, and Z, I could have done that. But you can't with children because there's childcare issues and you can't do things at the drop of the hat. So I've definitely had to alter my career in that respect, but I wouldn't change it for the world. But also so I've got 2 children, and when my second son was born about 10 years ago, I didn't have a huge amount of work at that particular time. And I really felt that it brought home to me how much my job and how much driving and how much racing and just being around people, how important it was for me. And I really needed it because it is who I am. Driving a car is a massive part of me, whether I am talking about it on telly or just driving to the shops. For me, I really get a kick out of driving, whether it's at 20 miles an hour or around a racing circuit. So I learned that it's in my DNA and that I have to have it in my life.
Well, we are properly out of time now. So last bit from you both is kind of tips and tricks. Nathalie, for women listening out there, for parents of girls listening out there, if they are in a wheelchair and they're thinking, I want to get into motorsport, marshalling or racing, or actually they just want to get to a circuit and they're worried about accessibility, all of that. Hints, tips, what would you pick any of that?
So I think if you're a young wheelchair user, female wheelchair user looking to get into motorsport and don't see anyone that looks like you're already doing it, it doesn't matter. Because like motorsport is a place where it caters for everyone. And I think that there is such a strong sense of community of people that wouldn't otherwise connect in other areas of life in motorsport, that if you're part of it, then you're in that community. So if you've got a kid or someone that you know that wants to get into it, encourage them, because it's great.
And is there more help on the FIA Disability Commission website, or where's the
website isn't? I think the website's under construction. But contact me. Have a look at my Instagram account. Have a look at the FIA Disability and Accessibility.
Are you on there as Nathalie McGloin, or
I am,
are you on there
yes.
as something like Lady Racer or something?
No, Nathalie McGloin. Simple. So there's I'm always here to give advice for anyone that wants to have a look at that.
Amazing.
So yeah,
Thank you.
And I would just say, like, as
women
you know,
in motorsport,
the motoring world, racing or journalism side of things is so welcoming and actually quite small. And if you are interested in designing, mechanicking, engineering, anything, there is a job for you within motorsport, within automotive. So please come this way, because we need you. Yeah, exactly.
The water's fine.
Yes, it is.
Excellent. We shall end on that note. Thank you both so much. This has been really fabulous. Thank you both. Thank you all for listening. Please like, subscribe, share, tell people. Listen out for more episodes of Women in the Driving Seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brum brum.